first ship of the Tawny Man trilogy.
The first ship.
Yep. Okay, talking's tough. Hi, we're the Book Mavens. I'm Amanda, she's Rachel, and we are in the Summer of Hobb reading challenge. We are on book 7 of the Realm of the Elderlings series, which is book 1 of the Tawny Man trilogy, Fool's Errand.
We are picking up with FitzChivalry, Farseer, once again from the first trilogy, the Farseer Trilogy, and it is about 15 years after the events where that first trilogy ended. So through all of that, we can see where the live ship traders picked up, and we're done with that part of the world. We're back in the Buckkeep, the Six Duchies area, and picking up with Fitz's story. And it has been lovely getting back to Fitz, back to a first-person perspective after seeing or reading the multi-view perspective of the live ship trilogy. Just like putting on that well-worn sweatshirt and snuggling in, you know this is a familiar character. That getting back to seeing what Fitz has been up to has been a real treat. And I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
I think it's because we're talking about 15 years and they have had a fairly long period of peace. So I think going back, I think that they can now, I think they have a different perspective in terms of how they treated Fitz. And if they want him to help them with this new situation, this new calamity that has happened in the realm of the Elderlings, that they need to treat him as an adult. He is an adult. He's in his mid-30s now. He's, I think, 35, exactly. And the whole thing is Fitz is living the solitary life. Remember, we're looking at it through his perspective, first perspective. Chade tries to come and get him to take over Dutiful's training in the skill. Chade has been trying to do it using the scrolls that have been left from the first skill master of Buckkeep, which when she dies, and that is when Galen becomes the skill master, even though he wasn't fully trained. He locked away all these scrolls that kind of teach about the skill. Chade has found them. They were in Regal's stuff. And he's been trying to teach Dutiful the skill. Chade doesn't have the skill. So this is very, very difficult to understand. So he tries to get, we talked about this a little bit before, he tries to get Fitz to come back to Buckkeep to become the skill master. He refuses. Then, of course, we have the recurrence of the Fool coming back now as Lord Golden. He, of course, they have, of course, amassed all of this wealth from everything that happened in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. And now they have set themselves up as Lord Golden, this very, very wealthy nobleman from Jamalia. And so the Fool is staying with Fitz for several days. He has to return to Buckkeep. Now a messenger is sent from Chade. Dutiful is missing. Prince Dutiful is missing. So he, of course, feels a sense of obligation. So he goes. The whole book really is about trying to find Dutiful and who has taken him. And all of that fun stuff. Eventually they get a hold of Dutiful, who's been kind of lured away. We're also gonna have to talk about the wit and the skill and how that ties into this overarching story, which there's a heavy emphasis on what it is to be witted in the Six Duchies. Witted being persecuted throughout the Six Duchies, which was left over from Regal. There's always been some suspicious of the witted, but when Regal set up his little like gladiator fight rings, right? In the Farseer Trilogy, that it brought out this kind of taste for blood with the Six Duchies, and they were rounding up the witted, and they were being used and tortured in these rings. And Catrican had those rings destroyed, but she didn't, I think, quite satisfy the bloodlust of the people. So the witted are being kind of systematically hunted down throughout the Six Duchies, and that is kind of the centralized conflict, I think, that's going to be with this particular trilogy, is the witted, or old blood, as they are called by people who actually are of the old blood or are witted.
So here come the spoilers.
Spoilers!
Right. Dutiful is not unintelligent.
No.
He's 14 in this book, but he's been raised to be a Princess Olive. I find
Catrican has raised him right, though. He takes care of himself.
He does, but she's raised him to be sacrificed. And I think I found that the most heartbreaking moment is when he's talking to Fitz. He goes, you must be somebody because no one would talk to me the way you do.
Yes.
Like, he goes, he basically admits that one of the reasons that he fell prey to this is because he was so lonely all the time. Even to his mother, he's the prince in sacrifice.
First.
Yeah, he's the sacrifice
Then the son.
first, then her son. Like, which is just so lonely. Like, he has no one. He has no peer, no equal, and he is only treated in the role that he has.
Everyone trying to curry favor.
Right, they never see him for himself, which is why he was so prey to
The piebalds.
To the piebalds and being led away by the love and the affection and the bond from the wit. And they talk about a lot because Fitz talks about that many times because he bonded 3 times in the Farseer trilogy of what the bond feels like, just not explaining yourself and being accepted. And like, it was heartbreaking the way he talks about it. But I think Fitz understands that because I think Fitz has felt often the same way. Especially,
well, I think that's why Fitz hid who he was forever. I mean, in the first book, when he's a child, none of those children knew who he actually was. You know, the whole relationship with Molly, he hid who he really was from Molly because he wanted to be accepted just as himself and not the bastard child of chivalry. You know, that I think he understood that he would have to be someone else in order to be accepted. So yes, absolutely. I think
he totally understands it. And I think that might be one of the turning points.
And now there's a bond, but there's a bond between him and Dutiful.
And there's a little bit of there's a skill bond because in the fighting of him, he skill pressed him. Maybe not on purpose. This is the thing too. Fitz is like, one of the reasons Fitz doesn't want to be his teacher is because Fitz is like, I'm erratic at best.
Well, he wasn't fully trained.
Right.
And plus, they don't know for sure Galen's attempt to train them all if what he didn't actually hurt their skill abilities.
And the skill's addictive. So he spent much of the last 15 years shutting himself off from it because it is physically painful, the withdrawal and the desire for it. He describes it as an addiction. And so But
I think they've been misusing the skill because Verity and Chivalry as well weren't fully trained. And so Galen trained them as well. I think that there's more to these scrolls. There's chests and chests of these scrolls. Now that he'll have access to in Buckkeep, I think there's going to be more explored with that. I think that they shouldn't go through this kind of pain. Something is wrong with how they've been using the skill.
Well, and he speculates that it might have something to do with also being witted. That mayhaps, because sometimes he talks about in the most powerful moments is when there's some kind of combination of the two. Like when Night Eyes in the Farseer Trilogy came through his bond to attack Justin.
I'm just hoping there's going to be a time with the dragons. That's all I'm saying.
I think you want the dragon. I think, well...
It says that
Lord Golden, Tintaglia is mentioned. Lord Golden, keep asking him, did you ever dream about dragons? And he's like, no.
He did visit Bingtown.
He did go to Bingtown. He's like,
travels
did you?
For
tell
years.
me about the dragons. He's like, yeah, Six Duchies, dragons, blah, blah, blah. And Lord Golden's like, no.
Yeah.
Dragons. It's just like.
Yeah, he doesn't know. He saw the live ships.
Yeah, but he's very passing about it, kind of like, meh.
But he wasn't, but everything that happened with the dragons happened after.
Yeah, after
Fitz.
He was there.
Yeah, so he wouldn't have seen the dragon.
And he did have that moment with Tintaglia when like he and Dutiful are both so far into the skill that they're just basically dying. They're losing themselves. And I think the voice was Tintaglia because the voice is like, you shouldn't be here.
No.
Go back.
Go back, babies.
You should. And it was a very maternal, it's like.
I hope so. I hope
don't come, and she says, and don't come this far again. And like sends them back to their bodies basically and saves them. And it's just this like, I think that was a dragon.
I hope it. I loved her.
I did love that scene though. Like, oh, what are you doing here? Oh wait, there's 2 of you. You shouldn't be here. It was great. I loved that scene. I marked so many lines because the writing in this one was so beautiful. And in the Farseer Trilogy, a lot of the lines I had marked were ones that the Fool said because the Fool deeply regrets the way they use Fitz as their catalyst. Fitz is their wedge, and they.
Oh, but there is so much drops, so many droppings of how the Fool is in love with Fitz.
I love that they
just everywhere.
He's like, what do you want me to call you? Because I can't call you the Fool anymore because that's not what you are. And he's like, when we're alone, what do I want you to call me? I want you to call me beloved. And he does. And that's what he calls Fitz. He calls Fitz.
Well, because
beloved.
They decided to switch names because he asked the Fool what what their actual name is. And
this is what my mother called me.
Yeah, beloved.
Beloved. And he's like,
yeah. So now he calls him that. The fool loves Fitz.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just so interesting, and I do think it's intriguing that Fitz never really pushes the fool, and like there's always just this little, nope, that's not going to touch it. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to touch it.
Ignore the problem like a real adult.
He will not. I mean, he opens that door by accident. He has no desire, and I like that though for him though that he respects that.
Yeah,
that
it's a
veil
respect
that's
for them.
there. And he will not cross that with the fool. And there's something that absolutely holds him back from fully exploring who the fool really is.
Mm-hmm.
Fitz won't allow himself to go there to discuss Night Eyes. We know, of course, we're talking 15 years since the end of the Farseer Trilogy. That is beyond old for a wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have, you have this foreshadowing through the entire book that Night Eyes might not make it to the end of the book, just simply because of old age. But it's not just that. We talked about how Night Eyes is so comfortable living in this cabin in the woods, that everything is there and peaceful and stress-free. But you see that Night Eyes has an accident where he chokes on a fish bone and almost dies, and Fitz puts himself at tremendous risk to kind of heal. He has this like a hole torn in his heart. I mean, like goes into his body.
The same thing that happened that Kenneth did to Wintrow with the Dragon's Help, which I thought was really interesting.
Yes.
That was a tie-in.
Yes. And repairs that damage, and Night Eyes is mad. They were told when he goes and stays with the Old Bloods that when death is upon one, you have to let them go. We talked about just how horrible it is to stick around and share consciousness. You're not supposed to do that. And that was very difficult for them because they do have a unique relationship among the Old Bloods, something that the Old Bloods aren't quite comfortable with. But the fact of the matter is that Fitz was never trained when he was young, so he bonded young. He bonded with young animals, which is a big no-no in the Old Blood communities. But putting all of that aside, his relationship with Night Eyes is just perfection. Just reading about this dialogue between these two characters is just amazing. And Night Eyes just pushes and pushes and pushes because they're partners in life. And when Fitz realizes that he has to go and do these things, he has to go track down Dutiful. He tries to tell Night Eyes to stay behind. Night Eyes refuses. We belong together, brother. We're pack. And so he goes and he just
and in the end,
there is just
he's the one who helps. He, like a true partner, he holds, like, he saves the day. He allows him to get away, and then Fitz comes back and rescues him. They had been captured and rescues them, and he dies peacefully with Fitz, but in the most beautiful
a hunting dream.
They're having a hunting dream together, and then Fitz realizes at the last moment what's actually happening. I'm gonna cry. He realizes what's actually happening. It's so sad, and there's just the most beautiful line because Fitz is like, "Wait, I'll come with you," and Night Eyes just laughs and he goes, "Wait for you? Never. I've always had to go ahead of you and show the way." And then it is just crushing.
I can't even talk about it. You know what's coming. I mean, he has lived a long life. It's not that this is some kind of, like with Smitty, the puppy. I mean, he was a young dog. This was just because, they just had these adventures together, and they were together. When they traveled for years together, that this partnership, this level of a bond was somebody else, and how integrated they had become. To have that would be like losing half your body. It would just be gone. And so Fitz having to go through that. Not only is he going through losing Night Eyes, but you also have a parallel going on with Dutiful losing his cat. And even though that bond hadn't been, it's not like the almost 2 decades that you have with Fitz and Night Eyes, but still that bond, that sharing of oneself with something else, and to have that severed, how devastating that would be. And I'm very interested to see with Fitz if he bonds with another animal again. I kind of hope that he doesn't. But also because I kind of do, because I love the way that Robin Hobb writes that relationship. Maybe with Prince Dutiful. Dutiful's young. For him to have another bond would be interesting. But how she wrote that bond is just amazing. And then to have it not there, I just can't imagine reading now about Fitz without Night Eyes being there.
She's perfectly captured it so that the way that Fitz is mourning this aloneness of being without Night Eyes, you feel it as a reader. You can't imagine reading this story without Night Eyes and his commentary and his thoughts, and it's masterfully written. It's beautiful.
It is.
I love the cats in this book so much. As always, the animals are the best characters. Let's talk about Fennel.
Let Amanda talk about.
I love Fennel.
Cats. I'll talk about the cats and the wolves, and she can talk about the cats.
Fitz has not a lot of experience with cats because they didn't really keep any cats at Bugkeep. They kept dogs and falcons, and he meets this cat, Fennel, who belongs to a hedge witch, Jenna, who is a friend of Hap's, and she's
a charm maker.
She's a charm maker. It's very interesting kind of side plot. I think she'll develop into more of an important character later. Cat named Fennel. And he hears the cat speak. The cat, I love the way the cats talk. Up, climbing up, which is pick me up. He says, make a lap by the fire. Go sit down so I can get in your lap by the fire. The cat, he goes, I'd never heard another animal speak so clearly to me. And it says, cats speak to who they want to when they want to. But it's their choice, which is such cat-like behavior. It's all about their choice, which, and you learn that, funny. You learn that from Fennel, because Fennel is very, I'm her favorite. The cat loves to remind people that it's be nice to her. I'm her favorite. At one point, somebody gets up. The cat was in the lap, and she gets up, and he goes, this is your fault. You made her get up, and now the lap is gone. I hate you. Just so matter of fact about it. So after this has all happened, in the very end of the book, Fitz is back in Bugkeep, and he goes to see him to check on Hap. And he's so sad because he's grieving and mourning Night Eyes. And the cat's pet the cat, you'll feel better. Talks about itself in the third person. And he's I don't want to pet it. Pet the cat, you'll feel better. And then he's petting the cat, and the cat's told ya, you feel better.
Very, very self-confident, that cat.
Yeah, I find the pace a little bit more relaxed, maybe, because there's not a imminent war, and so it didn't feel as dense.
It wasn't as dense. It wasn't as jam-packed like the live show trailers.
Review the tape. It was drinking out of a fire hose, especially that last book. In the Farseer, you were just everything just kept happening fast. And this one was it was one adventure. We went on the adventure, and now we're home.
It was well paced.
Next adventure.
Everything wasn't left at the very end. I felt like it unfolded very naturally. Now, of course, with all of her books, they just kind of end, and it just is going to pick right back up. We reached our page limit. Stop now.
Stop.
But we know that he is, of course, that Fitz is going back to Bugkeep. He is going to keep up this new image as Tom Badgerlock, as Lord Golden's manservant / bodyguard, but he is also going to be training Dutiful in the skill, and also to be able to control his wit. So reading this book, going back to Fitz has been curling up in bed with nice, fluffy, fresh sheets and nice, cushy pillows with a nice big mug of really hot, milky breakfast tea and a big giant muffin with the rain coming down outside. It's all kind of gray and dreary out, and just to snuggle in my bed with a nice hot beverage and something really full of carbs, like a big giant muffin, and just to read this book. That's what it's been like for me. That's how I would rate this book. It's going back to a very familiar character that I really gravitate towards Fitz. I really have enjoyed reading Fitz. I want to continue reading him. I'm very much excited that there's a whole other trilogy that's going to be centered around Fitz again. I'm there for that. I am very much looking forward to the fact that there are more books, and just really immersing myself back into Bugkeep. It's just like I said before, that putting on that well-worn sweatshirt is very comfortable, and it's relaxing for me. I really enjoy it. Even though there's a lot of things going on, there's certainly tense moments and sadness and humor. It's very comfortable, and I'm very excited to be able to kind of curl up and enjoy the rest of this trilogy. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a comfort book. I'm going to go chicken noodle soup. It's just right on a cold, rainy day.
This is a winter read.
Oh, this would be a great winter read. This is a winter night read. Yeah, for sure. When you're all cozied up somewhere.
Like a fire.
Yeah, dark and cool outside.
A nice big cushy blanket.
Oh, yeah. Yes. The big bowl of chicken noodle soup. Yeah. Next week, we'll officially hit the halfway mark in our summer reading challenge with book 2 of the Tawny Man trilogy, Golden Fool.
So like and subscribe if you enjoy watching and reading along with us, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Well, but you want back up here? I pick you up. You want me to pick you up?
She's not. Okay, well, if he doesn't make his decision, I'll do it.
Well, here, come here. You want me to? So you turned around and then you came back and sat and looked at me expectantly.
That's where it gets you.
You're such a stinker. You're such a cat. You're such a cat.
Okay.
The cat.